And for a while, even now, in China, probably in Japan and other countries in East Asia, talk about the tripod, the three major players in the international community as powerful economies and powerful political forces. North America, European community, and East Asia. Of course, one of the preconditions for East Asia to emerge as what the Japanese Prime Minister calls the East Asian community is a close collaboration between China and Japan, which is not necessarily happening. But East Asia, we call it the Confucian culture area. And that again is not sustainable because the emergence of India in South Asia. And of course, with India, we now have the four golden bricks, and the number one in that four. This is actually coined by an economist at Goldman Sachs, but it's not very widely accepted. It's Brazil. Brazil, you know the language of Brazil, right? It's Portuguese. And I think the vice president, I forgot his name now, the joke was generated a lot of joke. They said, well, since Latin American is so great, I really have to study Latin. And then the people say, Brazil, you know, you study Spanish. Brazil is the great country in the Latin American countries. Oh, I have to study Spanish. But the emergence of Brazil indicates the re-emergence of Russia. And Russia is extremely powerful. And by implication, this is my sense, that some of the countries in Southeast East Asia, for example, you know Indonesia. How large is Indonesia in terms of population? It's probably the fourth largest country in the world. I don't know, fourth or fifth, maybe fourth. And Indonesia has incredible resources, and so Southeast Asia, and Malaysia, Thailand, and so forth. You think the Islamic countries will just remain there, waiting to be dominated? You think Iran is not going to be powerful? You know, it's the ancient civilization of Persia, and of course many other Latin American, many other Middle Eastern countries. Now the big question is Africa, and even today we just assume it's out of the map. And it is a case of a negative example of the modernizing process. And how long will that endure? You know, that situation will continue and open for discussion. And yet, it is clear that globalization, from the historical point of view, the most powerful engine for globalization has been America and Europe, and this will continue. So most of the other countries or other areas, in a way, react. They react to this phenomenon, just like they react to westernization or modernization. There are four ways of reacting to this incredible power of globalization as homogenization. So when you talk about cultural diversity, you have to assume that these other powers that I mentioned do have the agency of responding with a certain kind of power and influence. Otherwise, they will be just totally dominated by the Western model. One kind of response is acceptance, almost total acceptance. You know the example, a good example of this total acceptance of the Western mode of thinking, or Western motors upon China. Now, China, even though somehow reluctant in the early part of the middle part of the 19th century, then increasingly China just accepted the rules of the game of the West as the wave of the future. So China, including political and cultural elite, became really, because China, East Asia in general, under the influence of Confucianism, these are all learning societies. And they really understood they had to learn. You take the Japanese case. They first tried to learn from Netherlands, so Dutch learning, very early. And from Dutch learning to Spanish learning to Portuguese learning, of course to British learning, German learning, and more recently American learning. And these societies are, with all kinds of patriotic or nationalistic reactions, are the dominant force in these societies to not be Westernization. And they continue to learn. For example, one of the most powerful slogans in China today is scientific modernization, or modernization based upon science. Science, technology, democracy. And many of the things they refuse to learn.